Hello and welcome to the Football Fan Show podcast. This week my guest is Tom Moore and we're going to be talking about Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. We're also going to be talking about the managerial change at West Bromwich Albion. Were they right to get rid of Slaven Bilic, and is his replacement Sam Allardyce up to the job? Don't forget to like, share and subscribe on Spotify, Apple and Amazon Music profiles and across all podcast providers. At the moment, YouTube account is suspended. No idea why. We're getting that fixed. However, enjoy the podcast. Let's get into our first topic.
Let's get into Mikel Arteta.
Let's get into Mikel Arteta then, and then we'll have then we'll go for a break. So, Mikel Arteta, after their worst season in over 40 years, Arsenal are 5 points above the relegation zone. Mikel Arteta is now evens to be the next Premier League manager to be sacked. This comes from our favourite sacking website, The Sack Race. First of all, I was very surprised Slaven Bilic went midweek, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. But now it is Mikel Arteta that is the joint favourite with... I'm just trying to find out Premier League. I think it's a joint favourite with Dean Smith of Aston Villa, and I don't know why. I'm really not sure why that would be. But Arsenal fans clearly not happy, and midweek we decided to do a poll to ask, what would you prefer? And I've now accused it of being hijacked when everyone voted for Arsene Wenger. Who would you rather have in charge? Arsene Wenger or Mikel Arteta? So, Tom, you argue what you want to argue. I've got to argue the indefensible. Of course, Mikel Arteta is better for the job than Arsene Wenger, but I'm going to do my damnedest anyway, so I might piss you off here. But Arsene Wenger, would you rather have him in charge of Arsenal right now?
Honestly, no. I think Arsene Wenger coming back. I think what Arsenal fans are trying to do, I think they're trying to backtrack. I think the same ones who tried to force Wenger out have now realised that the grass wasn't greener as they would have hoped.
Arsenal fan TV.
Yeah. The only bit I've stopped watching Arsenal fan TV because Troops is no longer on it.
Yes.
So I can't. I can't stand any other guys. DT. Oh my God! What an utter cock. Oh my God, this guy, literally, if that is your approach to life, mate, literally just screaming and shouting at everything you don't like, mate, you need, fucking man-child needs to grow up.
What are you saying, fam? Sorry. It's just, that's all I think of whenever anyone ever mentions Arsenal Fan TV, that's all I think of.
Oh my God, he's got a clothing brand now after him saying BA to the fans. You know, I don't... The thing is, I think Arsenal Fan TV has grown too much, and I think it can actually have a negative impact on the club and the players. That's why Arsenal, a couple of seasons ago, had to issue a cease and desist order to change it from Arsenal Fan TV to AFTV, because they wanted to make clear that the YouTube channel was not associated with the club in any way because it was impacting the players that much. I would not have Wenger back. I think that would bring back a lot of the old problems. I think what's happened is the fact that Arsenal's hierarchical structure has changed so much since he's left, it would be impossible for him to come back. People like Edu Gaspar won't be in a job. For a long time in Arsene Wenger's reign, there was never a director of football. Arsene Wenger liked to have the full control of the club, and I think the owners, what happened, the board sat back and became quite relaxed to let Arsene Wenger run everything. But if there's no one to second guess your decisions, if there's no one to actually, criticize any decisions you make, if you rule with absolute authority, then how do you know that you only know your decisions are the right ones by your standard?
Absolutely.
I think what they've tried to do is they've tried to do too much of a hierarchical change too quickly. I think
it takes time. Yeah,
it does take time, and I think I would have preferred if Mikel Arteta got the job over Unai Emery, because there was still a lot of positivity and a lot of potential in that squad. Looking back on it now, we probably would not have got some of the players that we had done. I would say the best signing that Unai Emery made for Arsenal when he was the manager was Gabriel Martinelli. Because I see him becoming a real superstar at Arsenal. I think he's definitely one for the future, and he's definitely one that can, kick on and create a great young core and a great lifetime player if they're brought up right, given the right exposure, not relied upon when you've got a team full of vastly more experienced players. Then absolutely, I can see him being an absolute superstar. I think senior players like Willian really need to step up their game, because I see him and I think to myself, my friend, you are a winger, yet you probably run at defenders, realise that they're not going to move past you, or you realise that you are 32 and you haven't got the legs anymore to get past defenders, therefore you're going to pass the ball back. I would say arguably the best player at the club is Bukayo Saka. And I do feel sorry for a 19-year-old lad who is
just
essentially
into the team.
From fan perspective is carrying the team. Aubameyang's not firing on. Lacazette, Aubameyang and Lacazette both found their net consistently last time when they went fishing. So it's a really, really strange time. I'm going to make
you relive some pain now, because I'm going to go through Arsenal's results, I'm afraid. So obviously they've lost today by 2-1 away at Everton. They drew against Southampton. They were down to 10 men in that game. So actually, to be fair, Southampton, the way that they're playing, you're down to 10 men. I don't think a 1-1 draw at home is that bad a result. Obviously, the big result is once again down to 10 men. Where the heck are these red cards coming from? It clearly, there's clearly a mental problem with some of the players. They're clearly just switched off, because they went down to 10 men and lost 1-0 to Burnley, and that's the real kicker.
That's the horrible result. Fair play to Burnley. They bided their time. They sat deep. They defended well, as they do in most games. And obviously we were caught sleeping, and Aubameyang obviously, got the final touch before it became an own goal. I think there's a lack of discipline at the club. I think Arteta. I think what had happened before is that the players that are at Arsenal, a lot of the ones that the biggest problem for me, I think, are the ones that are still left over from Wenger and his time. Like people like Granit Xhaka. I think
three managers. Well, they're on their third manager now, aren't they? So
yeah, I think people like Granit Xhaka. Wenger, we could all see it from his time. He would show unwavering loyalty to his players. I think that's what's gone on, is that there was unwavering loyalty, and then suddenly a manager came in who would not care about loyalty to the players. They just wanted performance. You saw it with Unai Emery at the start with Mesut Ozil, and then he started getting games. You see it with Arteta with Ozil. You see it with Guendouzi, with some of the other players as well. I think a lot of the other managers have not shown the same loyalty, and I think it's good, but I think they've tried to do it too quickly. I think what they should have tried and done is get the players to believe in the philosophy, get them to understand the philosophy and the culture of what they want to do, and then judge them based on that, rather than say, I don't think you're going to fit the way I want to do things.
Mm-hmm.
You need to put them out there and say, this is the way I want to do things, try it, and if it doesn't work, then if you're not going to commit to the philosophy at the club, then you're not going to be at this club.
Yeah.
It's
cutthroat business football. What in your mind is the worst result of the two? Burnley beating Arsenal 1-0 at home, or losing 2-0 away at Tottenham?
Tottenham, 100%, because it was the one thing that I would say it hurt the Arsenal fans most is the fact that it was a result that sent Spurs to the top of the table.
Yeah.
I think it just compounded the misery. I think because we had not long come off, we'd just come back from being beat 3-0 by Villa at the time, I think, or I might be thinking a bit too far back.
2-1 to Wolves. You were defeated. You were beaten at home 2-1 to Wolves. Villa was then it was Leeds 0-0 at Elland Road. Then it was a 3-0 home defeat to Aston Villa. And then you have the 1-0 win at Old Trafford. What I will say, though, is that between the Leeds match and the Wolves match, you won 3-0 away in Norway at Molde. Before the Tottenham game, Arsenal won 4-1 at home to Rapid Vienna. These are Thursday night Europa League matches. And then before the Burnley game, Arsenal won 4-2 against Dundalk. Now, there was no... and then obviously you had Southampton as the midweek game. Arsenal have had quite a lot of midweek games, the Southampton game being on a Wednesday, not a Thursday, but the games do they stack up. So I think Arteta can use that as a defence, saying, well, we've had to play in the Europa League on a Thursday night. That doesn't put us in a prime position to play at a weekend. I mean, this is the excuse that Jurgen's used on a Saturday, that Ole's used on a Saturday. I don't think it's a million miles away for Arteta to use that bullet to have it in his arsenal. Pardon the pun. Sorry, that was unintentional. But it's a good weapon to have if he needs it. Not that I'm saying he does, because I think the next game is so obviously it's Arsenal and Man City midweek, this time on a Tuesday. And then they have on Boxing Day a massive game, London derby at home against Chelsea. That must be a must-win now.
Absolutely. I think if we can't get through this Christmas period, because we haven't won a game since October, as in the Premier League.
It was the last win. So the last win was that Manchester United result. That was on the 1st of November. But the last win at home was against Sheffield United on the 4th, which is the month before November. What's the month? My mind's
October.
Blank. October. So the 4th of October was the last time Arsenal had a home victory. That was a 2-1 win against Sheffield United in the Premier League. Obviously, they had one in Europe before then, but they'd lost to Leicester and then they beat Manchester United away. But the last time they won at home was a 2-1 win in October against Sheffield United. So this Arsenal-Chelsea game at home, so it is I think if they had drawn today, then that Arsenal and Chelsea match is a must-not-lose rather than a must-win. But because of the defeat, I think it has now become a must-win. What do you think?
It has done, and I think there would need to be something looked at in the club. I think if Arteta's not going to recall players like Ozil back to the squad, then I'm afraid it's quite clear that creative touch is still missing. If you've noticed in Arsenal's formation, so when they were having a bit of success was obviously when they were doing the 3-4-3. Now Arteta, you can tell his favourite position is a 4-2-3-1. The problem is you're playing with players who are used to the 3-4-3. You spent the better part of last season in a 3-4-3, and you're trying to force a formation when you have no one who can naturally play in that number 10 position. I'm all for players with versatility. I think players like Maitland-Niles they are a rare gem. Being able to step up into any play well in any position he's playing in, whether if it's on the wing, down the middle, at fullback, wing back, anything like that. You cannot deny the fact that players like Maitland-Niles give 110%. But then to have someone who you can say, absolutely, I can rely on this person to play in that number 10, be creative. I know Williams played there in the past, but the problem I have with people playing in so many positions, it starts to affect the flow of the game. It affects your tactics. No player is going to have the same impact in one position as as they do on another. That's why I feel like Arteta needs to recall Ozil to the squad if they want to see any kind of change. If anything, just to make sure you get your money's worth out of him before he goes, because it's obvious he's not going to stay. You need to get your money's worth out of this guy before he goes. Because at the moment, he's sitting at home streaming Fortnite and having to
earning quite a lot of money sitting on his ass.
Yeah.
Let me just go through some of the odds and see if. Well, let's go shopping. Let's go to the managerial supermarket and see if any of these people perk up your ears. Looking at the odds, these are all from Paddy Power. So 23-10. So the favourite is Massimiliano Allegri, who left Juventus in 2019. Yay, nay? Quick thumbs up. No, okay. Brendan Rodgers, second favourite at 3-1, obviously, the Leicester City manager. No?
I'd like it, but he won't beat Leicester.
He won't, and he has an association with Chelsea. Thomas Tuchel is the third favourite at 11-2 with Paddy Power, current PSG boss. Not doing particularly well, I will add, not by... When I say particularly well, I mean by PSG standards that they should absolutely go and spank everybody in France because they're so much better. They're not doing that. They are still top of the league, but they're not spanking everybody. Is he somebody that would interest you as Arsenal manager, or
who was Thomas Tuchel manager of before PSG?
I will find out for you
because I believe it was Bayern Munich.
I will find out for you because he is the current PSG boss. Who was he in charge of before? It was Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund. He spent a year out the game then after leaving. I think he replaced Klopp. I think he replaced Klopp at Dortmund. So there you go.
I think I would say Thomas Tuchel I'd be on the fence about. Because I think he's worked at a lot of glamour clubs. And I think in the position Arsenal are in, he probably would not be the person to get you out of a hole, because you see it with PSG. They're not in a massive hole, but they're not destroying the competition
they're not setting the world on fire. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you just got to have the manager that's got the right mentality to get them out of a hole. If I was to be honest with my favourite choice, as much as it pains me to say it, would be Mauricio Pochettino.
I was going to say that, and then I thought you were going to throw up or something like that. I was going to say Poch, and then, loyalty is dead in football. Let me go through some of the others, because is he on this list? He's not actually on the list. He's not actually on this list. I think they've ruled that out. He's not on the list. This next one is an instant no from you, but you're going to love it. Rafa Benitez, 10-1.
No.
Diego Simeone is also 10-1, by the way. Now that is that's interesting to me.
I think it is interesting.
8 years he spent at Atletico Madrid.
He's what? Sorry.
8 years. Well, coming up to 9 years he spent at Atleti.
I think if you've been at the same club 8-9 years and you still haven't achieved a Champions League, a European trophy, or a league title in at least half of those leagues, change has to be made.
Who else is 10-1? The former Nice manager Patrick Vieira.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole former players thing is a bit of a. It's great for a nostalgia thing, and bringing the players together and things like that. But you can see from Solskjaer, you can see from Wayne Rooney managing Derby at the moment, you can see it from Frank Lampard. It doesn't always translate into the best results.
You forgot about the best former player manager, the greatest manager ever, Zinedine Zidane. Sacked tomorrow.
You see it with him as well. It's great for the nostalgia trip. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's a lot. It's difficult to get it to translate into performances on the pitch, and I think a lot of the Arsenal players at the moment are playing with their heads down. It frustrates me because I was watching the game and I could probably count on all my fingers and toes how many times I was saying to the players, "You need to make a run, or you're moving the ball too slow." because it seems whenever they get onto the break, as soon as they get into that final third, the whole move slows down, and all the Arsenal players are static, and all of them want it to feed. No one wants it to run. Players like Pepe and Willian, and by extension Nketiah, should not be asking for the ball to feed. You've got the you've got the pace, you've got the strength, some of you, and you've got the ability to get round defenders. And that may be down to the fact that a lot of them probably are massively fatigued due to how disorganized and how fast paced this season is. You can't deny it's fatigue. So that's why I think Arsenal's results in Europe are usually a lot better, because that's when they send out the younger squad. Because a lot of it, and the younger squad as well, a lot of them, they're not making massive amounts of money. I think, players, when you have players like Willian making probably like £150,000 a week, and then you have Reece Nelson, who's probably earning about £30,000 a week. But one thing I could say about Reece Nelson, when he plays, he turns up. Sometimes he may go missing for spots in a game when Arsenal are on the back foot, and he may not, but he tracks back. He does the dirty work. He doesn't mind sticking his leg in if it'll win him a foul. Just like leaning into a challenge. But he's playing for the club. Players like Joe Willock as well. I rate Willock massively, and I think Willock could actually potentially make a very, very good number 10.
Let me just go through and throw some other names. We'll just do a whistle-stop tour. 12-1, the greatest player in New York Red Bulls history, Thierry Henry. What other club is he a legend at? I forget. Eddie Howe, the next Celtic manager, at 16-1. Not going to be Arsenal manager. They had, remember that conversation like a few years ago when Arsene Wenger was still the Arsenal boss, and everyone was like, yeah, this guy at Bournemouth's pretty good. Maybe he should be the natural successor to Arsene Wenger. Never happened, and plus Eddie Howe is replacing, as I say, he's replacing Neil Lennon at Celtic. Fight me on that, because I guarantee you he is Celtic manager, and I'll be very disappointed if he never becomes it. 16-1, Friedrich Ljungberg. This is the one you're really going to love, though. 17-1, current Rangers manager and Liverpool legend, Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, nice.
Roberto Martinez is 20-1. Here we go. Mauricio Pochettino, 25-1. Why would you pick Poch over the likes of, say, a club legend like Vieira or Henry or Tuchel, or the PSG boss?
I think Tuchel would probably have the wrong mentality. He's not a manager who's ever had to dig a club out of a hole before.
No, that is true.
He's more of a manager who has to be. He's the one who likes to get performances out. And while I get it'll be good to get performances out, I think particularly with him, because he's worked for a lot of quite glamorous clubs, he's probably used to working for clubs that have a bit more capital behind him, as is with PSG. I think if he doesn't have the same freedom as he's had previously, obviously we know, Borussia Dortmund are hardly money bags, but they have been a lot more active in the market in terms of getting quality players in. They may not have spent that much money on them, but at the same time, I genuinely don't think Thomas Tuchel's the right man for the job. The reason why I like Pochettino is the fact that he didn't spend massive amounts of money, but still managed to get, because before Pochettino came along, Spurs were consistently, hitting mid-table, with their Martignols and Andre Villas-Boas and things like that.
Yeah, they were kind of. I would say to what you just said, Everton and Tottenham were very similar in terms of their league standing. Remember when Moyes was in charge of Everton, they were normally a 6th or 7th team. They were fighting for those two places. They were never fighting for the top 4. And that's where Tottenham kind of were. Although AVB would have thought he was kind of bought in to replace Redknapp, who had got them into the Champions League, to try and get them back. And he was just consistently in the Europa League. So yeah, I see what you mean about Poch taking them forward. I think, though, I will say this, that Pochettino couldn't spend money because he wasn't afforded money by Daniel Levy. I think Daniel Levy controls the purse strings of that club very well and goes, well, we can spend money on him, but not him. And I think if you give any football manager an open checkbook, they'll sign anyone they want. They'll go for Messi and stuff like that. So I think Pochettino would spend money if he had been afforded it by Daniel Levy, but I don't think Daniel Levy would have.
But I think that's a good quality to have, is the fact that just he did not have the finances available that some other managers may have. That's what. But all he did was just tactically make his players a lot better. So
you would want a manager that would tactically, would work with younger players and make them better. So you wouldn't want, say, a manager that's going to put a boot up your ass like Maurizio Sarri.
Sarri, I think I'd love a manager to motivate. I mean, I think Pochettino has got that motivational quality, and no doubt I imagine Allegri has as well. But at the same time, you've got to have that manager who's going to be tactically sound. Arteta, at the moment, I still don't believe he knows who his best 11 are. And that was the argument that probably got Unai Emery sacked, as well as the fact that 18 months in the job and he did not know who his best players were, or his best 11. And that's the thing. I think a lot of the time the players try and play the same way, but week in, week out there are different people in. So if you're trying to play Route 1 football from defence, you're not going to be able to do that unless you've got David Luiz in your squad. So if you force people like Rob Holding to do a forward diagonal pass, 99 times out of 100, it may end up off the pitch. And then that's when the frustration brews. I think at the same time as well, if you're trying to ask people like, I think with Arsenal, it's not the fact they're playing badly, it's the fact that they can't score. And I think a lot of pressure is put on. We've got 3 natural-born strikers, and I think a lot of pressure is put on them. One of them we play out wide, the other one doesn't get any service, and the second one is still quite raw. The third one's still quite raw. The problem is, the way we play at the moment, you can see Arsenal putting a lot of crosses, but they're playing like they'd still have someone like Giroud in the squad. You put crosses into the box, but there's no point if you've got no one there to finish them, because there's always going to be teams who have got 6 foot plus defenders. If your tallest striker is bang on 6 foot in Aubameyang, but's wiry as all hell, he's more of a getting in behind rather than bodying people and holding up the ball, then goals like that aren't going to come about. I think with Poch, the team just needs that refining. It just needs that cutting edge where, the belief put into the players saying, look, if you run at this guy, he's just going to track back and it will just open up more space to you. You can't dilly-dally on the ball. You can't spend the whole time wondering, shall I go this pass or shall I run down the wing? You need to make a decision and you stick to it. With Saka, I would say where Saka and Willian are different, playing roughly the same position, but where they're different, if you look at the way Willian runs, he takes the ball in his stride, runs with it, decides what he's going to do, decides it's a bad idea, and then goes backwards. Bukayo Saka, you see him just run with the ball, and if he sees a player at him, he's just like, well, I can either draw a foul, and risk getting caught on the counter attack, or I can just keep running forward. That, I think, if you look at the goal against Southampton, I don't know if did you see the setup, the way Aubameyang finished it, but it all started from Saka.
No, to be honest, I didn't watch many games that weekend, so I didn't get a chance to see it, and to be honest, didn't see the highlights. But
it's a midweek against Southampton.
Yeah, I didn't get to see much of the highlights, but no, midweek I watched Liverpool-Tottenham, which was a cracking game, and then I think I watched part of Leeds, but I didn't watch. I saw the goal for Southampton, but I didn't see the goal for Arsenal. But apparently, yeah, it was a cracker.
That's a question as well. Why can't Marcelo Bielsa be in the question for Arsenal?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, he's another manager that would give him a kick up the arse. But the thing about Marcelo Bielsa is that he doesn't last. This Leeds United is the longest job he has ever had. That is the longest job he's ever had in his career.
What about Nuno from Wolves?
I don't see him leaving Wolves because his agent is the club's. Isn't his agent the the guy that signs all the players for the clubs as well. So,
I bet his agent's the agent of every Portuguese player.
Pretty much. Hey, we are going to talk about one of the... Oh, go on.
Because I was going to say, one of the things, now that you said the word agent, I think one of the things that may be plaguing Arsenal right now is where they're under Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger, obviously, he absolutely hated agents with a passion. And then there were certain agents that were blacklisted by Arsene Wenger that they would never do any deals for. One of those agents, I believe, was Gia Karabchan, who...
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Carlos Tevez' old agent.
Yeah, so they never, ever, ever did any business with Gia Karabchan. But now he probably represents the most players at our club. Which I think is quite unusual that, he's obviously been blacklisted for a reason. And I think, the argument about football agents is, that's an argument for another day. We could write a book on why agents are probably the worst thing in the sport right now. But I think the problem with agents is the fact they sell all these players, get them these great contracts, and the players are just happy there to play. And the managers ultimately are powerless.
And then they sue EA Sports when they have legally obtained the rights to their player licenses. Yeah.
But then, as with all agents, they should be as troublesome to you as a cloudy day.
Oh, yes, I remember that. West Bromwich Albion have been the first to move in the Premier League. They have sacked Slaven Bilic, who is now 15-2 to be the next manager of Celtic. No, it's Eddie Howe's job. I've already said that, and what I say is law. I'm going way above my station with that statement. The first manager to be sacked. Now, I thought this was harsh because he was sacked after a 1-1 draw away at Manchester City, and that stunned me because I was like, who do you think you are? You're West Bromwich Albion. When I think of a yo-yo, I don't actually think of the childhood toy. I just think of West Brom because they are the definition of a yo-yo club. They bounce between the Championship and Premier League so often, more so than Wolves. So I thought this was incredibly harsh. But he has been replaced by the greatest England manager of all time. No, not Sir Alf Ramsey. What did he win? What, the World Cup? Nothing. You need a 100% record to be the greatest England manager of all time, and this man has it. Thanks to the journalists that got him sacked, we got to the World Cup semi-finals with the one Gareth Southgate. Sam Allardyce, Big Sam, back in the Premier League. He's had more football clubs than he's had hot dinners. I'll go through the list in a minute. First of all, Tom, your reaction to Bilic getting the sack. I thought it was harsh. Did you think it was fair?
I wouldn't say it wasn't fair at all in any way, shape, or form. I think Slaven Bilic did well to get West Bromwich Albion back into the Premier League. We made some really, really good signings. He brought a belief back to the club. It was a strange one because West Brom's form hasn't been that bad when you consider people like Chris Wilder are still in their job at Sheffield United.
And they moved to the bottom of the league.
Yeah, absolutely. They, haven't won a game at all this season, Sheffield United. They hadn't, I think what you see with a lot of managers of clubs who come up the divisions, they show a lot of loyalty to the players that got them there. So you can see people like Sheffield United not massively spending in the summer, not recruiting what I believe to be the right players. And then you see West Bromwich Albion basically do exactly that. They not only, reward the players that got them there, but the ones that they had on loan, they've signed permanently. So like that Mateus Pereira, Grady Diangana, who I think is their best player. These are players that were on loan the previous season, and now they've gone out and spent the cash to bring them in permanently. Whereas with Sheffield United, I think their most significant signing was Rhian Brewster.
Yeah,
a player that
was.
never.
Yeah, you're right.
They spent 20 million on a player who had a very, very good season at Swansea, but at the same time never played in the Premier League. I don't think for his parent club, which was Liverpool.
Nope.
I think 20 million would be respectable if he had an in and out season at Liverpool.
But he's
if he got a goal here, huh?
He's English, so that
yeah,
jumps up the price.
But not even one of the standout English players, if I'm honest.
Oh no.
He didn't light the world on fire for the England youth system, for the under 18s, 19s, under 21s, 23s, what have you. So it was just a bit perplexing why he cost so much. I mean, it's an excellent bit of business by Liverpool. They managed to get a transfer fee for someone who hadn't played for them at all, I don't think, in the Premier League.
And a buyback fee.
And a buyback fee, absolutely, which I think Liverpool will probably be looking at now saying, you're all right.
God, we sold him.
Yeah. But it's I can't get my head around the Slaven Bilic sacking, because he's a manager. He used to manage West Ham, and when West Ham weren't having the best of seasons, he still managed to keep them in the league, despite the whole hubbub with Dimitri Payet. He'd probably be the best manager to be dealing with any kind of fallout or any potential any disrepute amongst the team. Obviously, he went through that whole debacle with Dimitri Payet trying to force his move back to Marseille. I can't say, you can't say that's gone well for him. I think Dimitri Payet was content. I think Dimitri Payet tried to have a bigger pond than West Ham was. I think he got a bit full of himself at West Ham with all the fans being like that. But I don't think it was fair on Slaven Bilic, particularly this side of Christmas as well. They weren't in any immediate danger. There was
they're about Fulham. I will say I just want to go through some of his results, because some of them are the standout results are fantastic. Like a 3-3 draw at home against Chelsea, that's a very good result. Okay, then they followed that up with the 2-0 loss to Southampton. They drew 0-0 at home to Burnley. Okay, that might have been a game that they should have won. The 2-0 defeat to Fulham, that's a painful one, because we were talking earlier on in the season about, is this Fulham team as bad as the Derby team that finished with a record low of points in the Premier League? Now people are having those same conversations, this time about Sheffield United, which could have been a talking point today, but we didn't go with it. They lost 1-0 to Tottenham. I would say they were unlucky in that match. Even in the Everton game, remember, they got a red card, and Slaven Bilic got into trouble with the referee because he said, if you're going to kill us, tell us before the game. They lost 1-0 at Old Trafford. That's not a bad result. They beat Sheffield United by a goal to 0. Okay, yes, they lost 5-1 at home to Crystal Palace. That's not a good result. But that 1-1 draw with Man City, that's a very good result. And then they've got a West Midlands derby tomorrow at 7:15 against Aston Villa. I think that's incredibly harsh. But what I would add is that if there's any club I expect to do it, it would be West Brom, after the way they treated Darren Moore.
I think the only thing I could think of, it could not have been performances. Slaven Bilic must have had a falling out with the owner, I imagine.
Apparently, he was offered players that he then turned down. So, like players, I can't name these players because they haven't been named, but players with significant. So, apparently, the rumor is that he turned down the signing of a player with significant Premier League experience. That's all that's said. Doesn't name the player. The story I read, it just says he turned down the opportunity to sign a player of significant Premier League experience.
Okay, and whilst I can understand that, rubbing the owner up the wrong way. Ultimately, it's not the owner's responsibility to choose the squad. Obviously, I do understand he owns the club, and he'd probably want it run in a certain way. But that's why you bring in football managers. Managers make these footballing decisions, and you live and die by these decisions. To get rid of him so soon into the season, after he managed to get them back into the Premier League after a couple of seasons out, is quite shocking, really, because usually you see managers, if they were some points off of safety in the relegation zone coming up to Christmas, then you can almost understand it. But, they're not churning out bad results. They've got some good results against teams that are fighting for top four. But I think what they were looking at was, are you going to be winning the games against the teams around you? So like Crystal Palace, that definitely. Burnley, obviously, Burnley are a very, very tough team to break down. They're never going to, they're not going to score many goals a season, but they'll do enough to make sure that you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it is very harsh. And with Sam Allardyce brings a lot of experience of having to rescue clubs from relegation. And obviously, and I think what the owner's done there is brought him in as a sign of that, saying, okay, we're in a relegation scrap, which, don't get me wrong, they are. But it's not the same as some of the other clubs have been in the past where Sam Allardyce has taken over. They've not been any an immediate threat because it's still early into the season. He's obviously built a squad and a culture around that same squad. When he took over at West Brom at the start of last season, he brought in some players who really, really shone through, like Romain Sawyers and things like that. Yeah, I think the West Brom owner folded his hand too quickly on Slaven Bilic and decided to get Big Sam in to try and save him from the relegation, to try and save him from a relegation fight, which I get, but I think it was way too soon. I would have given Slaven Bilic at least a Christmas period. I would say, okay, we've got a Christmas period. We're going to be playing at least 3 games. If you can get 4 points from those 3 games, that's fine. If you get 1 point from those games or no points from those games, then look at Big Sam. I think you should at least give him the Christmas period to see how they adapt, because now Sam's taken over a club going into the busiest point of the season with the Christmas fixture list without having any time to get to know the players. He's basically say, okay, this team's in trouble. We need you to save it. Which, Sam Allardyce is probably the best person for giving a kick up the ass. I mean, his record shows that he's done it with clubs before. He's given them a kick up the ass to say, okay, look, this is the position you're in now. You need to realise that, and you need to start playing like it. You need to start to play that.
Men behind the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. He's basically Jose Mourinho from Yorkshire. At the same time, though, I don't understand the decision behind it. The only logical thing I can see behind it is if Slaven Bilic has had a big falling out with the owner, and the owner has physically gone to him saying, okay, if you don't deliver results in the next 2 games, you're gone.
I will say that unfortunately Sam Allardyce is not from Yorkshire, but he has returned home because he is from Dudley. He is from Dudley, which is around the West Brom way. The West Brom way, the Dudley way. So he is from Dudley, although Dudley have their... He used to play for Dudley Town Football Club.
He's from that part of the country where all the sentences sound like questions.
Yeah, Jack Grealish is from there.
Everything sounds like a question. Everyone's a fan around there. Getting a takeaway of mutton and rice.
Oh, goodness. So Bilic actually spoke to the Telegraph after his sacking, and he actually felt that the club were in a good position regardless. And he said that some people felt that we were in a good position. The interview was straight after the game. I was only thinking about the joy of getting a point at Man City, not my future. I was just saying that I don't care about those things, and I was thinking of what mattered. Following his media duties, he travelled to the Black Country, and he admits that reading reports on the journey regarding his future made him aware something's happening. He was sacked the following day, but it was a conclusion which wasn't surprising to him. Quoting this Telegraph interview, he said, "Then I knew something was up. I can't say I was shocked when they told me, but I also can't say that I saw it coming. I knew that there was always a possibility because I know how it works." But as you say, I thought it was incredibly harsh on Slaven Bilic. But Sam Allardyce, the legendary player for Dudley Town at one point, and of course Bolton Wanderers legend, has managed such great clubs as, shall we just go off the hit list? Bolton Wanderers, Newcastle United, Blackburn Rovers, West Ham United, Sunderland, the greatest team in the world, England, 100% record. Crystal Palace, Everton, West Bromwich Albion. Everton are kind of the standout there. That's a bit of a weird one, but he is a manager that is known for keeping clubs up. I would say he has had 2 years out of the game, and I wouldn't say that the West Brom fans that are currently celebrating survival on social media because they're like, oh, we got Big Sam, we don't have to worry about relegation. Just because you bought him in doesn't mean you're not going to get relegated. I love the fact that BT Sport made a picture of Fireman Sam out of Sam Allardyce. He's there to fight fires and kick butt and keep West Brom in the league. Really don't think that's going to happen unless apparently he has been promised money to spend in January. Otherwise, I think this is a step too far, and I think that 100% record is gone.
Yeah, I think the problem I find him having is say Big Sam keeps him up. What does he do next? Big Sam's not got any experience of actually leading a team further than above 10th place, I don't think. And not much experience as some of the other managers out there that could have taken over. As we've said, people like Eddie Howe were looking for work. Now, as much as I know you believe that, he's going to be the next Celtic boss, I think as well, you've got to look at the potential. Like, Eddie Howe could go to West Brom. How many times obviously Bournemouth didn't yo-yo, but at the same time, towards the end of Eddie Howe's tenure, they were quite close. But he managed to get Bournemouth to churn out results when it mattered. So I think that's where other managers throwing in a manager whose reputation is basically keeping clubs from survival, when he's proved nothing else but that. If he's given the money to spend on the players that he wants, then, fantastic. But where do you go from there? Big Sam, as much as he's a household name, it is for basically keeping teams up. Who's to say that after he keeps them up, they have the same amount of form as Big Sam's gone again? That's why, you can't look at managers as a way of keeping you up. You need to look at managers as a way of taking the club the next step forward. That's when you're going to be offering your managers your 3-4 year contracts and getting them to sign new deals when they've done it.
I would argue though, for a club like West Brom, he is the perfect manager because he'll just keep you in the Premier League. However, they had a manager like that and they got rid of him. They had a manager like that before. His name was Tony Pulis. Do you remember that? And they got rid of him. By the way, Fulham 1-0 up. Matt Ritchie, own goal. But former Swindon player Matt Ritchie with the own goal. So Fulham 1-0 up at St James's Park. But they've had managers like this in the past, and they've always got big clubs like West Brom really annoy me by going for these kind of managers, because they had a manager like that in Tony Pulis. They had a manager like that. Although, okay, Roy Hodgson left for the England job. Okay. That I can, that wasn't, obviously he was going to take the England job over the West Brom job. Anybody would. But they've had managers like that. And to be honest, if Big Sam keeps them up, and it happened to him at Newcastle, not really Newcastle, but it happened to him at Bolton, it happened to him at Blackburn. The club gets a bit too big for their boots, and he goes, and then they go in a totally different direction. It happened at Stoke City, happened at Swansea City, although it kind of worked for them. It happened at, where else has it happened? It's happened all over the place, all over the shop. It's happened at so many different clubs. Happened at Palace. The list is endless. So if he does keep them up, does he stay on? He's not exactly a spring chicken, is Sam Allardyce. And to be fair, when he left Everton, he was arguing that he was never going to manage again. I'm confused by it. I'm confused by it, Tom.
He's a fan of the old style of the game,
And I've not got a problem with that.
Yeah,
I've not got a problem with this style of play.
No, absolutely not. I don't have a problem with it either. But I think whether the issue of people having a problem with how he plays the game and how he manages versus what the current crop is like. What's the status quo for football managers and what's expected of them in this day and age. It's two very, very different things. I think a lot of the time, what Sam's problem is going to be is adapting to the new style of football. He's not played, as you've been saying, he's been out of the game for 2 years now. Obviously, that's 2 seasons. It doesn't sound like a lot, but a lot can change in that time. I mean, you see Liverpool change across 2 seasons. They had when Jurgen Klopp took over, weren't the best. He didn't inherit the best squad, but then he's turned them completely unstoppable at the season previous to this one. I don't know. I don't think it's the right appointment. I think Sam's past it. I think the game's gone beyond him, because that was the argument for Arsenal getting rid of Wenger, is saying that he reinvented the game, but then the game passed him. He reinvented the style of football.
I said that about Mourinho at the start of the season, and I'm looking like a bit of a tit now.
Yeah, but the thing is, Mourinho, I bet you any money that he'll be sacked by Daniel Levy next season, because Jose Mourinho cannot stay in the same club for more than 3 years, because if he does not achieve what he wants, he'll get frustrated. And if you've got a team in your hands with the fantastic track record of winning trophies like Tottenham have, then you're just going to get really, really frustrated really, really quickly. And that's where Mourinho can put his foot in it and actually say something that could make the owners think, "Oh, we didn't quite like that, Jose. You're bringing bad press to the club for the bits you're saying."
Yeah. I'm reading this article from the Daily Mirror that is titled, "Sam Allardyce's appointment is one that epitomises the desperation of the Premier League." And it goes on to talk about how Slaven Bilic would set up his team, how they were robbed against, Manchester United. They got a great point against City, how they were unlucky against Chelsea. They were 3-0 up in that game and they didn't win it. But this is this sacking and then subsequent appointment of Sam Allardyce, and this article by a Sam Allardyce fan, is just a stark reminder that the game is just about money, and West Brom want the money from TV. They want TV cash, and guarantee you, if they stay up, Big Sam is getting a big fat bonus.
Oh, absolutely. He's probably only in it for the money himself as well. The money that West Brom could pay, they do stay up. He's definitely going to get paid, essentially. That's I imagine the only reason why he stepped up, particularly at the age he is as well. He probably feels like he hasn't got much left to give. Problem is, I see Sam Allardyce shouting. I just feel like, it just concerns me that he may just keel over from shouting too much. Like you said, he's not exactly a spring chicken. So, yeah, it still perplexes me, his appointment. He will get a fat bonus if they stay up. That's why he only gets contracts until the end of the season, because they'll just be like, "We'll pay you to the end of the season. If we stay up, you'll get a big fat bonus, and based on performances, we'll keep you on. If not, then see you bye. Sam's made his money. He can go back to his villa, wherever that is.
Yeah, lovely. Lovely. Back to Spain.
Yeah, and then he can be called upon again when another minnows team, comes into the Premier League and be like, "Okay, we've just sacked off the manager who got us there. Now we need someone who's going to keep us there."
Yeah.
Sam Allardyce is like Mourinho, but at the other end of the table. He'll never stay. He'll never stay. He'll achieve, but he'll never stay at the club that long.
No. We need to quickly move on. We have only an hour left and we need to do our mid-season reviews before the end. So get your school tie out and pretend you're a teacher because we're doing performance reviews. We're going to grade every Premier League team in a moment. Just going to spend 10 minutes on this one. I know it's not enough time to dissect it. The FA are taking no action over Millwall and Colchester fans who booed players taking the knee. Now, when I sent Tom a message about the show and what we were going to talk about, I used a professional wrestling term called buried, which is literally where what does that actually mean? I've never actually known why they use the term buried, but it means you just lose all the time, and they've just buried a cause here.
Yeah, it's basically you're killing its push.
Yeah, you're killing the push.
A better term, a more real world term other than buried would be pulling the carpet out.
Yeah, actually, I didn't think of that. So have the FA then pulled the carpet out of the players taking the knee, because last week we were talking about this with Callum Brown, and we were talking about the PSG Istanbul Başakşehir match as well, and we were talking about, we all knew it was going to happen. You all knew that they were going to end up getting booed eventually. Cambridge United had that problem this week, and their manager had to come out and say, well, those fans just aren't welcome. Colchester owner came out and said those fans that boo aren't welcome. And then you get the Millwall players the following game after the derby match where the fans booed. I think it was against QPR, and they didn't take the knee. They stood together, locking arms with an anti-racism banner, and they were applauded. But they weren't applauded, I don't think, for the anti-racism bit. They were just applauded for not taking the knee. Now, I am one that has said that it was very obvious that it was going to get booed. All you had to do was take a look at social media. So they're dumb for the freak out that the media had, like Sky Sports News and everybody like that, and BT Sport. The mini freak out they had saying, well, they're booing. I'm like, yeah, of course they're booing. It was going to happen. Have you not looked at Twitter? Like, all you can see is just negative comment after negative comment. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong whether the players take the knee or not. I see the French kind of burned us this week because Marseille didn't take the knee when Man City did. And a French journalist responded by saying, well, we're not as easy adopting US trends as you guys are in the UK. So that was a bit of a burn. But has the FA just shown complete hypocrisy, I'm going to say, over this issue? Have they shown their lack of support for anti-racism sentiment, in your opinion? Tough argument, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Firstly, I'm going to put it out there saying that, anything that any club or any individual can do to demonstrate their stand against racism is more than welcome in my book. The problem is that where you have these teams like in Colchester and things like that, and Millwall, you gotta look at the demographic there, and you got to realize who probably the core fan base are. A lot of the season ticket holders for these clubs are a lot. They're older people. And they're so if you they'll probably think that their way is right. They've probably not done it just to spite, but I think you've got to look at the context and you've got to look at the history behind someone's reason of doing something. It's like the best way I can describe it is like put your hand on. I don't put my hand on the cooker because I've done that before and I know it bloody hurts. The same with them is that their experiences have carved them out into who they are. And because a lot of, particularly in lower leagues, a lot of the fans there are, much older men. If I can say that, is like it's much older men, who are probably born and raised in a time where things like that were accepted, and then when they see how quickly the times are moving and things that they were brought up to do, not to be respected, they probably feel quite ostracized and quite jaded. And football could be their form of. The thing is, what I don't understand is, I do honestly get the fact that players, football teams, 100% respect to them for using their platform as a means to promote anti-racist sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't. It's a double. It works both ways. You cannot promote something. You cannot promote an idea if you're not going to stand by it when the heat's on. As Jeremy Paxman said to Theresa May in the debate, if someone was looking across the room from them, they would say, "You're a blowhard that will collapse at the first sign of gunfire." And the thing is, and the problem is I think the moment that not football clubs, but football governing bodies get behind that, they will drop that sentiment if they feel like it's going to hit them in the pocket.
Exactly. And I think for some of them, and I think you bring up a great point, a lot of it is just good PR. And that's what annoys... I think that annoys a lot of people. And I think it annoys a lot of football fans as well, because I think most clubs see it as good PR.
Yeah.
And it's not good PR, and I agree with Les Ferdinand on this. It's good PR if you actually do something. And Les Ferdinand, the director of football at QPR, who QPR stopped taking the knee because they were like, well, what does it mean? It's a bunch of players making a statement, but what does that statement mean? What action is going to be taken? And that's why he insisted QPR stop it, although they have now started it again. They started again at Millwall purely because they booed them. I'll concede to you now.
But it's the same, like this. What I don't understand is the fact that people who make sentiments and then they cannot stand by them. I think if you're gonna have convictions, you're gonna need to be strong in them. So that if anyone questions them, you can. If people can't stand, and I know I'm talking in an ideal word, if people cannot stand in a room and actually have discussion, if there can't be dialogue about why things are the way they are. The same with like the Millwall chairman, obviously saying, these people, if you identify them, will have their season. I will personally refund their season tickets. Absolutely fair play to him. But what you're going to do there is you're going to ostracize a lot of the fan base, because obviously the fan base feel more at one with one another than they would with a millionaire owner.
Yeah.
If you feel like the Thai club's going to.
Sorry, I was just going to say what I would also add, and I said this last week, was that the weird bit about Millwall is that the majority of their players are black. Because of the area that they come from. A lot of their youth players are black, because in Bermondsey Peckham, it's mostly black people that live there. It's not really a lot of white people anymore. It used to be in the 50s, but it's not anymore, because those are quite, economically quite poor areas anyway. Sorry if you're from Peckham or Bermondsey, but those are the people that live there. So you're insulting your own players by booing.
Yeah. It's like a few years ago when Chelsea played PSG, and then that footage of the Chelsea fans stopping the black man.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then they're chanting on the train saying we're racist and we like it. And when I'm just like, how can you say that when probably arguably your best striker that you've had this century, Didier Drogba, is black? How can you say that when probably your best midfielder in this century, Claude Makelele, is black? How can you say it when people like N'Golo Kante, Willian, they're black?
Yeah, exactly. Ashley Cole is probably the best left back they've ever had. He's probably the best left back England ever had, and you can't say that. You can't be racist and you like it, and then support players that are black for Chelsea. I remember that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Not even black, but it's also like, if you're chanting that you're racist and you like it, then why would any player? But it's the same. Teams are not full English players anymore. And that's the state of the world.
Absolutely.
The English players in football teams are minorities nowadays, and that's a fact. You people do need to accept that. If you want the better players, you've got to accept that they are going to be from other countries. You cannot then say, oh yeah, let's get this player in, he's absolutely quality. But then when the shit hits the fan, and then people's true colours come out about their true opinions, you can't be surprised if those players don't want to take a stand.
Yeah.
The FA perplexes me in some of the decisions that they make. Obviously, they all stood for Black Lives Matter, but then obviously came down hard on Arsenal. I know I'll use Mesut Ozil as an example again. He stood up. He used his platform to stand up for the prosecution of Uyghur Muslims in China.
He did, actually, yes. That's a great point to bring up. And he was told off.
He was told off, and I'm 99% sure that's the reason why he's not playing at the moment, because he hit the FA and Arsenal in their pocket, because China was outraged, and, because obviously the Premier League and the FA got quite a lucrative TV deal over there. China responded by pulling the Premier League games showing Arsenal for months, and obviously that will hit shirt sales, that will hit TV rights and things like that. So that's why I'm been ostracised from that team, which begs the other question. Obviously, the Premier League doesn't want to do anything about the prosecution of the Uyghur Muslims in China, but at the same time, will bang the Black Lives Matter drum.
Yeah,
they'll.
And sorry, go on.
So it's almost a case of we'll stand up for this group of people, but only because the people that and this is the craziest thing. We'll stand up for this group of people because the people that are oppressing them are not the ones making us money.
Yeah, that is true. That is massively true. The hypocrisy of it. I remember when the NBA pissed off the Chinese, and then there was a whole a debacle about that, and now, in fact, actually, the British government is annoying China over Hong Kong. So Southampton lost sponsorship, allegedly, because of that, because they had a Chinese betting partner who then pulled the plug at the start of the season. And there are less games, apparently, in China. I will just say this. Cambridge United's match against Colchester United on the 15th of December, there were booing players taking the knee. The chairman of the club has now said it will... the chief executive of the club, say it won't be hard to identify the unacceptable booing fans, and they will be reprimanded. One thing I just wish to point out, and I pointed it out last week, and sorry for treading on our ground, but this is important. There are just there is no unified approach to this. It is all disjointed. There's Kick It Out as an organisation which works in football. Then there's the Premier League's No Room for Racism. Then the EFL have Not Today or Any Day. Have one fucking approach. One slogan. One message. Not this disjointed crap. Just come together with one clear message. Because they're not unified, clearly, in trying to tackle this. The EFL are doing their own thing. The FA are doing their own thing with Kick It Out. And the Premier League is doing its own thing. Work together. For goodness sakes. If you actually want to make a change, then work together. It should be no room for racism from Kick It Out. It should be no room for racism from the Premier League, as it currently is. It should be no room for racism from the EFL. It should be no room for racism from the Vanarama National League. Come on. It's so disjointed, so you can tell that there is no common approach to this. So no wonder fans and clubs are a bit like, well, what the heck are we meant to do?
But the problem there is that even with a unified message, unless that message is properly enforced by retrospective action for anything that could have occurred during a football match, the football fans are a lot wiser than they let on. They'll know it's just a PR stunt, for the FA, for the EFL, for things like that, to get their TV deals and everything like that, because everything's built around PR, because we're still in the and I hate using the term, we're still in the realms of cancel culture.
Oh yeah, we are.
Where people can essentially use a social media platform to have people's livelihoods ruined. Now, obviously, I don't condone that. I don't like that. I think being able to use something that was done a few years ago as a means to effectively end somebody's career is not right. But I digress. It needs to be a more unified message, and it needs to be enforced, but it needs to be enforced properly. So that doesn't mean dropping charges against people because you may think it may be bad, it may hit you in the pocket, but it also means not jumping up at the first sign of anything to do with, any kind of comments that could be made to harm. They've got to be properly investigated. There has to be a proper investigative body into these incidents, because you can't have extremes on both sides. You cannot not. The problem is, you take action and people will listen. They think it's less of a PR stunt and more, okay, this is something that's genuinely serious. If you start punishing people, it's like with John Terry. Back when he supposedly said those things, I believe that didn't the charges get dropped against him?
Yeah, he did. They were dropped against him. They were. So in a court of law, they were dropped against him, but the FA obviously they needed less evidence, so they prosecuted him. But he hasn't spoke to Anton Ferdinand since, because I watched the BBC documentary about it. He hasn't spoken to Anton Ferdinand since. He took the knee and wore no room for something akin to the no room for racism T-shirt, and Anton essentially said, I hope you actually mean that. Personally, I would not offer John Terry a job in football. I think he's an absolute twat. And it's clear, I'm sorry, you see the footage, it's clear what he says. Anton Ferdinand does not say black C word. John Terry does. So John Terry is not responding to Anton Ferdinand. John Terry is being a racist, allegedly.
Yeah. Yeah, and if they want the message to come across effectively, they need to effectively manage and investigate individual instances. But I think when you look at the idea of race as a whole is a lot more complex, because when a lot of people talk about racism, they'll talk about individual instances of prejudice but then that feeds into the fact that definitely in the UK and in vast parts of the world, it's a lot more institutionalized.
Yeah, that is for sure. I just want to quickly just read out the FA statement on this. Having carefully considered these matters, including the observations of all relevant parties, we can confirm that no formal disciplinary action will be taken against the clubs concerned on the occasion. However, the FA would like to further clarify that anyone who chooses to take the knee will continue to receive our support as they highlight the inequality and injustice experienced by the black community. So that is saying we're not going to punish you if you boo, but we're still going to support the players that do it. I think we can end this by saying the FA is what it's always been: hypocrisy at its finest.
Absolutely.
And after that exasperation of the FA being such hypocrites, that is where we end this week's edition of our Football Fan Show podcast. My thanks to Thomas Moore for joining me this week. We are not back until early January, back January 9th, with more content. We're on our Christmas break. By the way, Christmas Day, we are dropping a special podcast episode. It is our mid-season graded review. So we are grading each Premier League team. We're going to give them a nice little grade, depending on where they were on Saturday, the 19th of December 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you again. Well, we'll see you again Christmas Day with our graded special, and we'll see you in the new year for new Football Fan Show. Thank you very much.